It does seem, though, Roger and Tyler, that as the Mueller probe gets more and more desperate, there seems to be different angles taken, different measurements being reached for them to try to legitimate it again, or to just create a news headline to make it seem legitimate. I know that there was another appointment by Mueller. Roger, if you want to get into this, and then we'll get Tyler's expertise on this, but it seems to me like every development now is, or just for lack of a better phrase, is a quote-unquote development just to create a news headline to act like the Mueller probe is still relevant and still legit.
Well, it was interesting to me that as Spygate began to proliferate in the media, and it became clearer and clearer that the FBI had infiltrated the Trump campaign, not to look for Russian collusion, but to plant faux evidence of Russian collusion, that immediately it was leaked that Donald Trump Jr. had a meeting with a Saudi prince prior to the election, who evidently offered to help in the election, but whose offer was never acted upon. This is a classic example of the special counselor leaking information to try to get other news off the front page. It was Tyler Nixon who pointed out to me this stunning legal opinion by Professor Stephen Calabrese of Northwestern, which questions the underpinning of Mr. Mueller's entire appointment, makes the case that his appointment is unconstitutional in itself. Tyler, can you capsulize this for us?
Sure. No, and I would also give credit to Mark Levine as well, who brought that out. And there's another legal scholar who validated this. Basically, Mueller has been operating as a U.S. attorney. He has been operating way outside of the scope of what the original supposed Russian collusion narrative was supposed to be. Now, you have a special counsel because you want someone, first of all, because of conflicts of interest within the DOJ, right? But also because it's a narrowly defined investigation. It's not supposed to be just generally dragnet, U.S. attorney stuff. So he's been
at this point, it's had no definition, really.
Right. No, it's just like
only in theory,
totally open-ended.
Not in practice.
The way Rosenstein wrote the actual appointment, he said, when anything you find, and he's validated him to, go after Paul Manafort for supposed money laundering activities.
We're about to get that document declassified.
Yeah. And so the thing is, under the Appointments Clause of the United States Constitution, which is Article 2, I believe it's Section 2, Clause 2, actually, says that the president will make appointments, and that in certain with what everything but inferior officers, the Senate or the Congress has to sign off on it. So in other words, you cannot just have a executive, top executives, in other words, like the Attorney General, and in this case, the Deputy Attorney General, just making appointments in and of themselves. They have to have the consent of the Senate. So in Mueller's case, he's been appointed effectively as a U.S. attorney. I mean, he's acting as a U.S. attorney. They're not referring cases out to U.S. attorneys in the case of Manafort, which should have been referred out. It should not have been, has nothing to do with his original charge. They're obviously scrutinizing Roger. They're scrutinizing anybody they can get their hands on to, in many ways, as you said, keep the investigation alive. But the bottom line is that Mueller is operating in capacity. By the way, he also has actual special assistant U.S. attorneys in Virginia, so they can keep that Manafort case alive, even if they were to rule against him, with the validity of his appointment. But long story short, Mueller is operating with such a wide swath and such authority, and was appointed not even by the Attorney General, but by the Deputy Attorney General, that it's effectively like, appointing a king within the kingdom, so to speak. It violates the Appointments Clause, and I believe that Mueller is absolutely, his appointment is unconstitutional, and certainly is played out that way because he's operating way outside the scope of what a special, unique, narrow counsel would be. He's operating like a U.S. attorney, and U.S. attorneys have to be confirmed by the Senate. You can't just have some second, fiddle at the AG, DOJ, appointing effectively a U.S. attorney, which is what's happened here.
Well, and I can't remember who it was, whether it was a Senate Intel Committee, a House Intel Committee, or whether it came from somewhere else. It may even be a Tom Fitton deal, or Michael Horowitz. I forget who it was, but someone is about to release the unredacted, and they're going to declassify the document that Rosenstein is supposed to be laying out the definition of where Mueller is allowed to go in his investigation.
Yeah.
Now, when they first released that, it was basically just a redacted, black piece of paper, right? So they fought it. Now they're going to say we're going to get it again. So we're going to find out what the scope of Mueller's actual investigation was supposed to be as laid out by Rosenstein. We'll see if that has any interesting developments. But we were talking about this in the break, Roger, me and Tyler, where Trump today tweets out, he talks about the fake Russian witch hunt, how he's saying this is the Democrats meddling in the midterm elections. And then he's saying that he doesn't have time to be dealing with this anymore. He's got to focus on the North Korea deal, bad trade deals, Veterans Affairs choice, the economy, et cetera, et cetera. He can't waste his time anymore on the Russian witch hunt that should be investigating Clinton, Russia, FBI, Justice, Obama, yada, yada, yada. So the question always comes back to me then, and Roger and Tyler jump in here in the final 3 minutes before the break. Trump obviously knows everything. He knows what went on. He knows about Mueller. He knows about all of the lawlessness of the Obama administration, the lawlessness of Mueller. And the question that we just continue to have every day is, you're the president. When are you going to make the move? So I'll start with you, Tyler. I mean, we're seeing Mueller making all these moves for whatever reason. When does the president finally decide to strike back?
Well, I think that's the frustrating part for many of us, and as you feel the frustration is that I think the president thinks he's appealing to a larger constituency or some sort of like power that's going to swoop in and save him. Okay, well, we agree with you now, Mr. President, so therefore maybe, Jeff Sessions. Nobody's going to do that. He's the president. He's the chief executive. This is his branch of government. He's responsible for it. The Department of Justice is his branch. He needs to make the final decision. And what I hope is that his laying out this case by tweets, which he's done very effectively, has laid out what are all the, essential, the core of the argument. I would think he's been listening to Infowars and to this show.
And the real players, too, behind it.
No, exactly. And I think what he's doing, and, you got Giuliani in the mix now. I think internally there's got to be Republican leadership has said, you cannot let this go on into the midterms because this is exactly what they want. They want to taint the midterm elections. I said on this very show a couple, 6-8 weeks ago that he should set a deadline and say, that's it. Past that, you're fired, period. If you can't wrap it up by then, we're not going to have this impacting the midterm elections. So I would hope that the president is laying the groundwork, frankly, to where there's going to come a break point. It's going to be like, you know what, enough. This is it. We've had enough. And he'll just one day, as he's prone to do, just come out and say, you're fired. That's it. It's over. And what are they going to do? He's the president. And I think that's what he needs to realize, and he needs to exercise his power as president. He was elected, not Rod Rosenstein, not Bob Mueller.
Well, and he has to realize that his role in this deal is going to be the dark knight and not the white knight, because
he'll be vilified no matter what he does.
Exactly.
Take your lumps now.
And you might as well just accept the fact, if you're President Trump, and he knows this, that whatever he does, they're going to ridicule him on CNN. They're going to ridicule him on MSNBC. They're going to use the consortium of the ABCs, NBCs, CBSs to bring him down as well. You can pepper in the Bloombergs and everybody else that goes into that. Honestly, Bloomberg, I'll be honest, their media hasn't been that bad as far as their coverage of Trump, because they do more economic stuff, and they have to admit it. He's kicking ass for the economy. But
they're making money.
But if you're Trump, you just have to say, look, I have to be the dark knight. They hate me no matter what I do. If I say, yeah, sir, do an anal probe on me, they'll hate him for that. So he can't win.
And if he rips the scab off and gets the miasma of this out of the way, his true accomplishments will be more highlighted. So I think people will say, you know what?
It's time.
Yeah.